Welcome everybody to the last Cover 2 podcast of 2019. My name is Nick Nenad.
I'm Jared Smith.
And of course, like I just mentioned, this is the Cover 2 podcast. This podcast is going to be very, very, very football-centric. Like the last couple, it's big-time football season right now. The playoff races are going. College football is coming up sooner than later as far as the College Football Playoff Semifinal goes, and we are going to predict that since we will not be doing a podcast next week due to the Christmas week, and we will miss those college football semifinals. So we'll predict those games a little later in the show. We'll also be doing, of course, Do You Care? Talking about some of the Angels players signed, some Lakers rumors, and some other stuff. And then, of course, we'll do NFL MVP picks and NFL playoff predictions real quick. I mean, because there's a couple teams that can make it in here and there, but we'll do predictions about that. But we're going to start the show today by discussing, just NFL news. We got a lot to talk about. The LA teams with some very interesting games this week. And kind of the opposite of what you'd expect from the whole season. The Chargers with a huge win against one of the best teams in the NFL, the Kansas City Chiefs. And the Rams with an absolute upset loss versus Nick Foles and the Eagles. Where have we heard that before? So a lot to talk about. We also have the Saints jumping into first place. Cowboys disappointing against the Colts. I won't gloat a little bit, but I did say that Andrew Luck was my guy for the playoffs, and he proved it against the Dallas Cowboys this week. With a shutout win, and then of course we'll be kind of discussing just the overall playoffs. But let's talk about the Rams and Eagles, because I think this was probably the biggest thing to come out of the weekend. We probably would have started the show with Chiefs and Chargers say we were doing a podcast on Friday, but that's just a little old news, and we'll talk about that in a second. So Eagles and Rams, Jared, what happened in this game? Why are the Rams all of a sudden now kind of disappointing everybody, and why do the Eagles seem to be a better team with Nick Foles?
This was very, very surprising, and I would have expected the Rams to come out and have a little more fire and energy, at least to the start of this game. Listen, the week before, they got whooped in Chicago. Now, granted, it was cold. The Rams are on the West Coast. They're not used to playing and those types of elements.
Jared Goff's played in California his whole life.
Right. But still, the Rams got kind of embarrassed on national television last Sunday night. So coming into this matchup against the Eagles at home, I was really expecting this team to come out and put up some major points. We know defensively they do have some issues, and even though they have some big-name players at some good positions, we know that defensively they have some holes. But for this Eagles team with Nick Foles to come in here and put up 30 points on this Rams team and really kind of dominate the majority of the game, right? I mean, yeah, the Rams had some moments, but for the most part, the Eagles had a stranglehold in this game. And that, I think, was the most surprising thing, was that the Rams were always playing from behind. They never looked like they were in sync or in rhythm. And I'm going to really point to two things. One, I think Jared Goff is coming down to earth a little bit. And while I think we can all agree that Sean McVay has been one of the main reasons why Jared Goff has had a lot of success.
Agreed.
I think the second point is that NFL teams have now had almost a full season, more than a full season, to scout and defend this Rams offense, right? And so there's a lot of game tape and film tape out there now for these teams to go out and say, okay, this is how we have to defend these guys. So I think those two things, the fact that Jared Goff has cooled off a little bit, and the fact that defenses are now finding other ways to stop this team, I think that's kind of halting the success that this offense is having.
Yeah, no, I agree with most of the statements you just said. The Rams, I agree. Their defense has been disappointing for all the stars that they have. You should not be giving up 30 points to Nick Foles. Okay? And you know what's funny too? I want to jump on before I tear apart the Rams. I want to look at the Eagles, and man, it just seems like, right, Jared, that Nick Foles is a better fit in this offense than Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz is the star quarterback. He likes to do things himself. Nick Foles is not the star quarterback and kind of just lets the coach tell him what to do, right? And then they're successful, and Doug Peterson obviously is a great coach. They won the Super Bowl last year. But this was the first game all season where it seemed like the entire offense played well. I remember watching the Super Bowl and watching a lot of Eagles games with Nick Foles last year in that improbable Super Bowl run, and saying, man, receivers just tend to get open. All of the running backs play well. It just was amazing, this running back depth. And then, you look at this year, for most of this year, and obviously they were 6-7 going into this game, the running backs weren't doing anything. Corey Clement looked like a backup. Wendell Smallwood looked like a backup. Jay Ajayi's been lost for the season, but he didn't look that good before he was hurt. And now in this one game against the Rams, it's like the Eagles were the Eagles last year, the same team. That's what I saw. It's very interesting what's going to happen. In the future with Carson Wentz and Doug Peterson, and whether that relationship will work out, and whether more than likely Doug Peterson will still be there as Wentz is progressing as an NFL quarterback, because Nick Foles obviously isn't the future of the Eagles, right? But he definitely seems to be a good fit come these important games for some reason. And I know there was a couple of lucky plays, the two guys being wide open down the field, a couple those kind of things. But I was impressed with Nick Foles, and this Eagles team I think can win the games the rest of the season with Nick Foles. And I don't know if that would have happened with Carson Wentz. Now let me talk about the Rams. The Rams, I agree with pretty much everything you said. Teams are figuring out McVay. The defense isn't playing good. Goff is, like I've been harking on, is showing that he's a pretty average quarterback that has a great coach that tells him what to do. And then injuries are starting to build up. One thing about this defense I want to talk about was the fact that when they built this defense with Wade Phillips, they have a lot of stars, but a lot of sketchy stars too. Ndamukong Suh, Marcus Peters, Aqib Talib, guys that kind of are selfish players in a way, right?
Oh, you mean like going into the stands and starting a fight?
100%. And I was going to bring that up. Marcus Peters is walking up the turnstiles of the Coliseum trying to fight fans during the middle of a game. Right, Ndamukong Suh in the past has stepped on guys during games, hurt his team, been suspended. Aqib Talib has been more worried about pulling a guy's chain off than actually guarding a wide receiver in a game. So this is now, all of this stuff is combining together to show that there needs to be continuity with a team. And now that these teams, or this Rams team is losing, because they've now lost 2 weeks in a row, you're starting to see the personalities come out. Marcus Peters trying to fight fans, right? He's not paying attention to the playbook. He's paying attention and cussing at fans in the first row. For not even, I don't know what this fan said, but according to the video, what he said wasn't that bad. And there's videos of Marcus Peters not tackling people in this game too, intentionally not going for hits. I don't know, making business decisions, but this Rams team is in trouble, and they're definitely not, in my mind, the favorite to get to the Super Bowl anymore.
Yeah, there's a lot that you just said, and I want to talk about a lot of it. First of all, when you talk about guys, maybe not being into the game mentally, of course, Marcus Peters, when you want to go into the stands. Was it still during the game, or was it right after? It was absolutely
during the game.
Okay.
Yeah.
That obviously should never happen, and there's no reason for us to even talk about that.
Yeah.
But Ndamukong Suh and Aqib Talib, I get what you're saying. Yes, their pasts have, been a little sketchy as far as some of the things that they've done on the field. But really, since they've been with the Rams this year, they've been squeaky clean. Now, obviously, Aqib Talib
what I'm trying to say is
had injuries.
Yeah.
But if you want to, start that category again, I think and you even mentioned it, right? The fact that they have now lost 2 in a row and things don't look all sunshine and rainbows, right? Those things, fans like yourself are going to start to bring up these types of things again. And from a Marcus Peters standpoint, I think you have a legit argument. For Ndamukong Suh and Aqib Talib, I don't really think you can put those guys in that category right now because they've been clean. Now, yes, have they performed to the level that we would expect those to this year? No, not necessarily. and one because of injuries and the other just because he hasn't.
Yeah.
But I don't think we can necessarily put those guys in that type of category for this year. I really just think, yes, on paper, this Rams team should win every game, right? From a name standpoint, they have stars at every single level. But guess what? When you get in between the lines, you actually play the game. Like I said, these coordinators are starting to figure this team out. So it's getting a little bit tougher and tougher. And for these Rams now, they don't just have an open gateway into the playoffs to have a first round bye and home field advantage. The Saints are creeping up on them. The Bears look really, really good. I don't think anyone wants to play the Bears right now.
No, not that defense. No.
If you're the Rams, right? Todd Gurley has a sprained knee. And if the Rams would have taken care of business in Chicago and last week against the Eagles, maybe they could afford to sit Todd Gurley knowing that they would have a bye and they could rest some of their starters.
Because, Jared, who do they play at the end of the season? They play the Cardinals and the 49ers. You can easily take these next 2 games off.
Well, you would think. You can't now.
No, exactly.
You can't now because now you're still fighting for home field. Now there's a possibility that the Bears can jump you for the number 2 spot.
Yeah, absolutely.
And now you guys would be the number 3. So even though they would still get a home playoff game in round 1, there's no guarantee they would get that home playoff game in round 2. So, yeah, this Rams team is regressing a little bit. Now, I'm not going to, throw in the towel and say this team isn't going to, can't win because they obviously can. But they're not trending in the right direction. And we say this a lot about teams going into the playoffs. You want to go in on a hot streak. You want to go in with confidence and feeling good. And right now, this Rams team is not doing that at all.
No. And what I was saying about Sue and Talib is there's the possibility of this happening. When things don't go right, these players tend to be the first to kind of go off the rails. And I don't want to put an indictment on Sue and Talib. They've been, pretty normal this year. Now Talib has been injured the whole year, so we haven't got the full Talib experience yet. But Marcus Peters, who was probably the one guy you could have said that you could have guessed would have done something first, he's just the first in this case of guys with big egos on this team doing something really stupid. And although nothing happened to him, we'll see if there's a fine and stuff like that, as the NFL seems to, only until they get videos, but get people in trouble. But we'll see. And you talk about Todd Gurley. They just signed C.J. Anderson to help him out in the backfield, too. So I'm guessing we will see a lot less of Todd Gurley in these final 2 games, considering that they do need him for the playoffs, and they are going to be in the playoffs, and they do have a home game no matter what. You obviously want that one less playoff game, but they still have to lose, and to lose to the Cardinals and 49ers is pretty hard when you have that pretty good of a roster. Now, it could happen. Seahawks lost to the 49ers this year. Cardinals' next home game is possibly Larry Fitzgerald's last home game this Sunday. So you never know what will happen in these games, and that's why you play them. But yeah, the Rams are not trending in the best way, and it's going to be interesting. Now I had a poll, but we're going to transition to the Chargers real quick. I saw a poll on Twitter, 3,000 votes by fans in LA, and it said that the question was, which LA team will make the Super Bowl? And there was the Chargers, Rams, both, because that could happen, or neither. Jared, 36% of fans voted that the Chargers were going to make the Super Bowl. Guess how many? 8% the Rams. 8% the Rams.
That's not surprising me right now.
But why are people? But why? So here's the thing, though. Is we can talk about the Rams not playing well, but why are fans all of a sudden jumping ship on them? Why are fans jumping to the Chargers?
The earth is falling apart. The Rams have lost 2 games in a row. The Chargers, like I said, had 0 chance to beat the Chiefs and somehow beat the Chiefs. I mean, of course, everyone is going to, kind of ride the wave of whatever is trending at the current moment. And at the current moment, the Chargers look to be one of the hottest teams in the NFL, period. And the Rams have a 2-game losing streak.
Yeah.
So, of course, fans are going to say, oh, well, it's all about right now. It's not about, people don't want to look at the entire season of work and the whole body of work and what both of these teams have done throughout the whole year. It's literally about right now. So, Next week, I'm not exactly sure who the Chargers play.
Ravens.
Okay, the Chargers could lose to the Ravens, who are a good team and have the number 1 defense in the league. The Chargers could lose to the Ravens. The Rams can come out and whoop on the 49ers. And next week we could have
the Cardinals.
Or the Cardinals, I'm sorry, and there could be a whole new poll, and everyone would be back on the Rams. Right? That's just how it goes. This is a week-to-week basis, so that I don't really put too much stock into that right now. I think, like I said, yes, people should be on the Chargers because of how well they're playing, and they just beat a very formidable team in the Chiefs. I'm not going to sit here and say that the earth is falling apart because the Rams have lost 2 in a row. They're still a very good team. They're still dangerous. I would not want to necessarily play them in the playoffs because they can still win, right? Yeah. And it's not like they have Todd Gurley's a little banged up, but it's not like they have a bunch of injuries. Their main guys are still there and still healthy. They just happen to be going through a stretch where they lose a couple. And listen, in the NFL, it's a 16-game season. It's going to happen. The Cowboys just got blown out by the Colts. I thought the Cowboys would win the game, but I also didn't think they would get blown out, right? It's just, you're going to have 1 or 2 games a year where things just necessarily don't go your way. 100%. Now, how do you respond to that? How do you bounce back? We'll see.
Exactly, and they have 2 easier games. Some of the easiest teams to play next 2 games, so we'll see what happens. By the way, just I did a little finagling there with that poll. 50% people said neither. Okay, so I wanted to get the discussion going, but it is interesting that 1,000 of these fans in this poll would vote for the Chargers to be a Super Bowl team when nobody even cared like 3 weeks ago. Okay, so and they're not even selling out their 30,000 seat stadium. So it's very interesting. It's very interesting. All right, let's talk about Chargers, right? Because we're kind of leading into them. Chargers with a big win against Kansas City last Thursday. We don't need to analyze the game that much because it happened a long time ago. Let's more discuss these 2 teams now. Because again, now the Eagles, we'll see if they make the playoffs or not. They are a half game back. They have an absolute chance at making the playoffs. But they're not the Chiefs. Okay? The Chiefs are still number 1 seed, even though the Chargers have are tied with record in them. It has to do with division wins and stuff like that. So the Chiefs do have to lose that number 1 seed and to lose the AFC West. But these teams are tied in record. And I want to ask you, Jared, who is the better team out of these 2? Kansas City or the Los Angeles Chargers?
That is, right now, the more complete team is the Chargers. And I don't think that's a question at all. The Chargers, defensively, are easily better than the Chiefs. The Chiefs' defense is like Swiss cheese.
Look at this. Chiefs' defense is very, very bad.
It is.
Very bad.
And it's not... listen, offensively, yes, this Chiefs team is legitimate. They can stay in any ball game. It doesn't matter. The problem is, I don't trust one lick of this Chiefs defense to stop any opponent. So, while this Chiefs team will make the playoffs, really, if I had to put money on it, I'm betting on the Chargers because at the end of the day, that Chargers defense will keep this team in the game if for some reason Phillip Rivers in the offense can't score points and can't get on track. The Chargers will not give up, 20 and 30 points a game consistently. You can count that they will be around the 15 to 20 mark in points. And if you're Phillip Rivers, you have to be very confident that you can put up more than 20 points a game. So that's where I stand.
And so they went for 2 in this game, and you don't know what would have happened in OT, and they go for 2, and it's kind of a broken play. Mike Williams ends up literally wide open in the end zone, so you can't even really analyze the play in a way. It wasn't some crazy schematic scheme that got them the touchdown. It was the Chiefs just not knowing what the hell they were doing on defense. Yeah. So, Chargers win the game. It's more about the comeback. It's more about this defense not being able to stop Phillip Rivers. They didn't stop him scoring 2 touchdowns in 5 minutes. Jared, in 88 games where a team was down by 14 with 5 minutes to go, that team had never won. The Chargers were the first one.
Wow.
The teams are now 1 in 88. The Chargers the only win. Okay, that's how bad the Chiefs' defense is. Okay, I legitimately think that this Chiefs' defense is so bad they can't get to the Super Bowl. I think they're losing before the Super Bowl. I don't think they can beat the Patriots. I don't think they can beat the Chargers. Right? Even though I get it, they went for 2 and they honestly could have won if the pass would have been incomplete on that last play. But this defense is just so bad. We're talking about teams figured out how to beat the Rams. Teams figured out how to beat the Saints. They're not figuring out how to beat the Chiefs defense. They're just bad. You just go, okay, let's see it. Cover 2, let's throw here. Cover 3, let's throw here. Right? Oh, man coverage? Oh, that guy can't cover our guy. That guy can't cover Mike Williams. Throw to him. Right? So, like we're talking about with the Rams, this Chiefs team is, and they lost Kareem Hunt, which you wouldn't have expected to happen, right? And that's a big factor, too. I think the offense is hurting a little bit, too, in that case. But this Chiefs team is not going into the playoffs strong. And, the NFL playoffs are very quick. You got to be ready to play. And I don't know if this Chiefs defense can win 2 playoff games. I think they can win 1, but I don't know if they can win 2.
The one thing I'll say about this Chiefs defense is they just got back Eric Berry.
That's true.
Last game.
That's the best player.
It was his first game back, so you can't expect him to be the all-pro that we know him to be, right? He's coming off an Achilles injury. He'd been practicing, obviously, a few weeks before that, but game action is a lot different than practice. So going into their next game, I expect him to be a little better and hopefully try to settle down that secondary a little bit, kind of be the mainstay guy, because even though he was, a lot of times it's the middle linebacker that really makes the calls and sets up a defense. For Eric Berry in this Chiefs defense, he was the one that was kind of lining guys up. So they were missing that captain and that guy in the back end. So now with him back, I think in the next couple weeks they can maybe get a little better. But as far as an overall defense, I don't think he's enough to will them to becoming a great defense in such a short period of time. But he is a very, very good player, and I think he will at least help them, kind of
Absolutely. No, Eric Berry is their best player. He's coming back off injury. That's a big deal for them. But there's just too many glaring issues.
You know what I will say, and not necessarily that we're analyzing this game, I'm actually going to put some blame on this Chiefs offense. Because now you could say that the Chargers defense played very well, which they did. But the Chiefs offense, you have to they're not dumb. They understand that their defense is not very good. So to give up 14 points, 2 touchdowns to the Chargers in 5 minutes of that game, if you're Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid, and this Chiefs offense, how do you not say, okay, we need to run clock, right? Now, whether that's strictly running the ball or misdirection, they're one of the best teams in the NFL at doing trick plays and all this motion and stuff like that. How do you not, control the ball and keep your defense off the field? A lot of times, most teams won't say that, right? It's about keeping your own defense off the field. But in this specific situation, you have to keep your defense off of the field. So whether you have to go for it on 4th down or, I'm actually putting some blame on this Chiefs offense for 1, not scoring enough points, and 2, not having good clock management at the end of the game, like I said, to keep their defense off of the field.
Jared, who the Chiefs' 3 hardest games been against?
Rams.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh,
probably Patriots.
Okay.
And now the Chargers. Right?
And now the Chargers, right.
How many of those games have they won?
That'd be 0-3.
That'd be 0-3.
Yeah.
Right. So my thing with Patrick Mahomes is this goes back. I want that veteran quarterback, right? And Mahomes is not smart enough at this point to, call the play like Drew Brees does and change it on 3rd down and get that 1st down, right?
It's not that he's not smart enough. He's still a rookie.
Well, yeah, technically.
His first year starting.
I shouldn't say not smart enough. You're right.
It's not that. He is very, very smart, but Andy Reid is the one that makes the calls. Now, Patrick Mahomes can make checks at the line, and if he sees something that the defense is doing, he can switch to another play. But it's not like he's in there calling plays in the huddle, or it's not like he has the power, per se, yet to literally tell Andy Reid, no, we're going to do this play, right? Drew Brees, Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, those guys can basically say, I want to run this play, and more than likely, they're probably going to
Aaron Rodgers literally was calling plays by himself.
Exactly. Patrick Mahomes is still young. He's literally still learning from Andy Reid and basically doing what he wants him to do. So I think you were a little wrong in that standpoint of, Patrick Mahomes doesn't necessarily have full control of this offense yet.
Yes. But here's the thing, and this is why I don't overreact. They beat they're playing the Raiders, right? Or whoever they're playing. No, they're playing the Ravens. And he makes these great 4th down plays. Okay, well, the Ravens are good. I get they have number 1 defense, but they're not the Chargers, Patriots, and Rams, right? And like you said, this offense, I'm not going to put all the blame on Mahomes because Tyreek Hill dropped a wide open touchdown in the end zone, right? Okay, I know there was holding on the play, but holding doesn't make you drop a ball, right? So, you look at that if there wasn't any holding on that play, that's the worst drop of all time. Right in the end zone, because Tyreek Hill's helmet's too low on his damn head, right? I don't understand, but that's another issue. The Chiefs, they're not winning the shootouts, and Andy Reid is going to need to come up with smarter plays. The Rams, you look at them, and obviously I don't think either of us think that Jared Goff is the reason why this offense is, almighty right now. McVay, we've heard, is talking to him within 15 seconds of the play clock, the limit, and he's even calling checks on these plays, okay? I still want to put some more trust in Patrick Mahomes. Let him change the play, right? I get Andy Reid's an offensive guru, but Patrick Mahomes, if he sees something, he's Tyreek Hill, he's going to be open on this play, or Travis Kelce, he's going to be open on this play if I change the play. He's got to change the play. They don't have a good enough running back on a 3rd and 1 to get to the line, right? I agree with you. They needed to manage the clock better. They don't have a running back. It's like they still think they have Kareem Hunt. These running backs, when the defense is stacked in the box, are not going to find a hole because they're not very good. It's Damian Williams, it's Charkandrick West, it's Spencer Ware, guys they've cut before. Okay, so I do think Mahomes does need to have, occasionally make that change, make that call, like a Phillip Rivers, like a Big Ben, like a Tom Brady, like a Drew Brees, if he wants to be one of these elite quarterbacks. If you want to just rely on your coach to tell you what to do, that's only going to get you as far, and that's another reason why I think they're only going to win one playoff game. But we'll see. They have a big game against the Seahawks this week in Seattle. Another chance for him to show and prove that he can win a big game. This is a big game. Seahawks need to win this game, and the Chiefs need to win this game because the Chargers, they're playing the Ravens. The Ravens are good, but that's a winnable game. And I believe they play the Broncos at the end of the season. So the Chargers are going to be up there in their record. I don't think they're going to lose both those games. So, we'll see. Couple good games going up. And we'll take a break real quick. We're going to come right back with more NFL talk. We're going to be talking about the Saints. Ugly win, but a win nonetheless. They're now in first place. Patriots and Steelers. Very interesting outcome there. I don't think either of us thought that. And then we'll look at some of the bigger games coming up this weekend, and also do MVP picks, Pro Bowl discussion, and also overall playoff prediction near the end of the podcast.
Jam-packed.
Oh my God, we got a lot of stuff to talk about. All right, we'll be right back on the Cover 2 podcast on OC Rock Radio.
Now the pressure. Brady heaves it, and is it intercepted? He came down with it, and the feet down for Hayden. Intercepted. Ruling on the field, the feet were down.
He comes off Edelman, and a catch.
Yes.
Whoa!
Rams will send 5 receivers downfield. Goff will throw to the end zone, too high. Intended for Josh Reynolds. And with no flag, that's the end of the game.
This for the win. 4 seconds left in the game, but this is likely the final play that matters. End zone wide open. What a night for Mike Williams. And the Chargers have their first lead of the night at 29-28.
Welcome back to the Cover 2 podcast, continuing our NFL talk with so much news going on right now between games and coming down to the wire with the last 2 weeks of the NFL season, as we've got the playoff picture becoming a little more clear every single week. But we wanted to go back to the Monday night game where the Saints pulled out an ugly win in Carolina against those Panthers. Even though Cam Newton is having some shoulder issues and wasn't playing well, the Saints offensively have not looked the same the last couple weeks. The beginning of the year, they were on fire, and Drew Brees was basically setting all these crazy records. They were scoring 35, 40 points a game. And the last few weeks against Dallas, and then now on Monday night against the Panthers, this offense has been non-existent, scoring 1 touchdown. Nick, what are your thoughts?
I think this is a lot like we were talking about the Rams. I think teams are starting to figure out how to defend this team. The Panthers defense played really well in this game. They were tackling hard. They were good in coverage. They stopped Michael Thomas, which is probably the number one thing you have to do. It reminded me a lot of the Cowboys game when the Saints played the Cowboys. The Cowboys came out with a defensive strategy. It worked. They used their front 7. They stopped the Saints' best player. And they were able to win that game. The Panthers were just so awful they weren't able to win this game, but they had every chance to. And the score would have been very similar. It ended up being 12-9. The Cowboys game was 13-10. So I just think teams are starting, this is what happens. The team that's best in October and November and September is not necessarily the best team come December and January. And that's what's happening to the Saints and Rams. teams have figured out finally how to stop them. And, whether these teams are winning or not, in the case of the Panthers, they're showing the rest of the NFL what to do. The Saints with a huge game at home against the Steelers this week. The Steelers' defense is solid, right? I got the Steelers. I don't think the Saints are going to win this game come up this week, even though they have a game at home, right? Because the Steelers need to try to make the playoffs. The Saints now are one game ahead of the Rams and the tiebreakers. So it's almost like they're 2 games ahead. The Saints more than likely are going to end up with that number 1 seed. Now the Rams probably will end the season with 2 wins in a row. So you have that under your belt. So the Saints just can't lose the last 2 games. And seemingly the Panthers are out and probably won't care that last game. So you could almost book it. Saints going to be number 1 seed. But going into the playoffs, like we're talking about, you got to be hot. You got to figure it out. You have 2 games to figure it out. Unfortunately, the Saints have 2 tough games. But I just think teams have figured out how to stop Drew Brees. The lack of receiving options is now showing up for the Saints. When you stop Michael Thomas, Jared, who's the next best receiver on this team? Right?
Alvin Kamara.
Traquan Smith, right? It's and Alvin Kamara, he caught a lot of passes, but he didn't do much, right? Didn't even make the Pro Bowl this year.
He got snubbed.
But still, that lack of production in the last couple games might have contributed to that. So, I think the Saints are better in the case than the Rams, just because they have that veteran quarterback, a guy that's been there before, a guy that's won a Super Bowl, and a great coach in Sean Payton. Same attributes, been there before. So I think they'll be safe, and I think they'll be able to win games. But Drew Brees averaging 175 games per game, or 175 yards per game the last 3 games, is not going to cut it, okay? And if you come against a team like the Rams that can score a lot, or these other teams in the NFC that can do stuff, it's going to be tough. And I'm looking, if the Saints play the Bears, say, in the playoffs, that's going to be tough. They got a better defense than these defenses. They're stopping them already. So, Saints are in trouble, but I'll use one of your terms. I'll pump the brakes a little bit on saying that they're done for the season, because I think when you got Drew Brees, you got Sean Payton, you're going to be good.
You do. And with this game specifically, it was ugly, and they didn't score a touchdown until the 4th quarter. Alvin Kamara finally broke off a run. But I want to. There's a couple things, and you're right. I think we should pump the brakes as far as saying, the Saints are falling off offensively, because you're right. When you have Sean Payton and Drew Brees, you're going to be in every single game, right? No matter what. I will say, though, they were playing a division opponent, right, who knows them very, very well.
Yeah.
And they play each other 2 out of the last 3 weeks. So the last week of the season, the Panthers travel to New Orleans to play the Saints again, right? So I think there could have been a little bit of, we don't want to give everything away to this team because we're going to see them again in just 2 weeks. Yeah. So maybe their offensive playbook was a little bit dummied down in a sense.
Well, you're right. And let's say they lose that game, right? They go, we're going to win that last game for sure.
Right.
We're not going to lose that last game.
I don't think they revealed their entire... Like I said, who knows? But I'm just thinking, if I were the coach, if I were Sean Payton, I would want to save some things for that last game. And listen, you're right. The Saints do technically have a 2-game lead as far as first place in the NFC, but I'm not betting on that, right? If I'm the Saints, I am of the mentality, we need to go out and win these last 2 games.
Well, no, because the Rams are going to be 13-3. Right. They're not losing the Cardinals. They're not losing the 49ers. I mean, if they do that, the Rams are in a whole lot of trouble. You don't even have to worry about them in the playoffs, right? And so you're right. They do have to win these 2 games, but I think they will, right? I'm not confident they can beat the Steelers, but I think the Steelers are a hotter team. They're coming after a big win against the New England Patriots, and they have to make the playoffs because the Ravens are right behind their tail. The Saints, what I'm saying is, they're number 1 seed. They can lose a game and still be the number 1 seed, right? And they'll be fine, right? I even think they might even be, if you look at the whole scheme of things, still might be number 1 seed even with a loss in the entire NFL. So, even come Super Bowl time, they're going to be that team that's picking the coin toss, right? So, they're in the best case scenario when they're playing not their best, if that makes sense, right? They can afford to lose a game. They've already done their stuff. They actually win the games against the teams they should beat, unlike the Rams who lost to the Eagles, right? So, I think the Saints are going to be okay, but they do need to fix these issues, and Drew Brees needs to play better. And I think you're right. I think they might not be necessarily showing everything in the book, because come playoff time, you don't want every team to know what you're doing. And like you said, they're playing the Panthers at the end of the season. Now, that game is not going to probably matter as much come to the end of the season, because the Panthers are more than likely not going to care as much.
From the Panthers standpoint, no. Yeah. From the Saints standpoint, I think they need to win.
No, you have to win, but I'm saying the Panthers are going to be all into it, so the game is not going to be... There's not going to be two teams vying for the playoffs like we thought at the beginning of the season, or even midway through the season, what these games were going to be. I thought it's going to be Panthers and Saints for the NFC South. No, the Panthers were essentially eliminated, I believe. Were they eliminated? Or
no, they're not mathematically
eliminated. But they have to win. They have to win the next two games.
They have to win with a lot
exactly.
of help.
If people talk about the Browns with a chance of the playoffs, that's essentially the Panthers too in the NFC. Okay, they had every chance they could have, and they didn't do it. But I think the Saints will be okay. They're coming into the playoffs, and they'll be fine. All right, Jared, let's talk about a team that I'm not sure about anymore. Okay, and that is your Dallas Cowboys. They went into Indianapolis. And they, I'm not going to cuss, but they did something to the bet this weekend against the Colts. Put the goose egg up, 0 points against the Indianapolis Colts. And Andrew Luck, a guy that I am fond of, a guy that I'm saying is going to win a playoff game this year, whether they're 6th seed, 5th seed, whatever, right? Jared, it's your team. What the hell happened? And why are they losing and getting shut out in the middle of a playoff race?
I don't know what the hell got into this team, right? They're coming off of 5 straight wins and some pretty good wins, right? Now they beat the Eagles, who are a good team. They beat the Saints the week before. They were, I believe, they started the winning streak at Philadelphia. But it's like, so they have these good wins, and then all of a sudden they come into Indianapolis, who's no joke, right? The Colts have won 7 of the last 8. Andrew Luck is playing very, very well. And for the Cowboys to get shut out, the Cowboys haven't gotten shut out in over 15 years. Yeah, their last shutout was in 2003. So this is somewhat of a big deal as far as they really just didn't show up and didn't come to play. Like I mentioned before in the first segment when we were talking about the Rams, I think every team has about 1 to 2 games a year where things don't go their way from the start of the game, start to finish, and you just have a bad game. I think this was that. The problem is, like we continue to say, when you're getting into the late stages of the season, you want to be trending upward. Yep. And the Cowboys were. They were trending really
absolutely
high.
They were, yeah.
And then they just took like 3 steps back, right? So for me, I'm really going to point... Now, I said this on Twitter. Offense, defense, and special teams, all 3 phases did not play well. But I'm really going to point to one aspect, and it's not going to be the offense. I'm pointing to this defense, and specifically this defensive line. This defensive line calls themselves the quote-unquote hot boys. They're like, they get sacks and pressure, and they've actually played very, very well this year. Yeah. They gave up 139 yards. Actually, I'm sorry. They gave up a total of 178 rushing yards to Marlon Mack, Nyheim Hines, and Andrew Luck.
Marlon Mack. Wait, Andrew Luck?
Andrew Luck had 20 rushing yards, right? I mean, he can scramble.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is combined, they gave up a lot. They gave up 139 yards to Marlon Mack. Now, Marlon Mack is a good running back, but Marlon Mack should not get 139 yards against any defense, let alone a Cowboys defense that is very good this year. So, yes, the Cowboys didn't score any points, and of course their offense is to blame for not doing that. They had a dropped touchdown pass by their fullback. They got stuffed on a 4th and 1. So there are a lot of things that did not go their way as well. But this defense, to give up that many rushing yards is, number one, pathetic, and I hope they got embarrassed. I really do. Like, there's no silver linings really for me, and there's no good losses in my opinion. But I actually, looking back at it, I think the Cowboys were feeling themselves a little too much, and I think they got punched in the mouth. So I'm hoping they can come back down to earth and get their minds right and say, you know what, we're a good team, but we're not the Saints, right? We're not even the Rams that are sitting at 11-3, 12-2. That really controls our own destiny. Yes, the Cowboys control their own fate in the division as far as winning the NFC East, but it's not like they're going to get home field advantage or a first-round bye or anything like that. So I think they need to stop sitting here and acting like they're the best thing since sliced bread. They need to get back to work, and what I'm hoping what happens is they come out pissed off against the Buccaneers this week. The Buccaneers are not a good team. The Cowboys should easily beat this team, and I hope they come out and beat the brakes off of them, because that's what they should do. Right? You got embarrassed last week, right? Like I said, it's not that the Cowboys had to win that game against the Colts, but to get shut out and embarrassed like they did, or at least I hope they got embarrassed. So I'm hoping that they learn from this experience and come out and really dominate in these next 2 games and show that that was just a fluke and that's not really who this team is.
Now, who did the Cowboys play the last game of the season?
They're at the Giants.
Okay. So the Cowboys, a lot like the Rams, have 2 easier opponents, right?
All the Cowboys have to do is win
correct
against the Buccaneers or the Giants, and they win the division.
Correct. But you look at the Eagles and Redskins, and the Eagles play the Texans, that's tough, and the Redskins play the Titans. So there's a chance that these teams eliminate themselves and the Cowboys win the division this week. But let's say those 2 teams win, right? The Redskins somehow won a game with Josh Johnson. I don't know how. I wrote down, this is why the NFL is unpredictable, because stuff like this happens. Okay, that makes no sense, right? And the Eagles, with their backup quarterback, beat the brakes off the Rams, right? So, you never know. And I'm picking the Eagles to beat the Texans this week because they're at home, and I think they're going to try to make the playoffs and stuff like that. The Texans have won way too many games in a row. That needs to end soon. But if they both win, no matter what, one of those teams ends up the season 9-7 because they play each other last week. Right now they could tie, I guess, but so Cowboys absolutely need to win these last 2 games, right? Because there is that looming Redskins-Eagles matchup at the end of the season where one of these teams might, or both these teams might be 8-7 going into that game. So it's going to be tough because the Redskins play the Titans and the Eagles play the Texans. They might just lose this week, but Cowboys, like we've been talking about with all these other teams, need to prove that they are legit, and they need to prove something to their fans and other teams that when you go to play them, there's not some glaring issues. But I want to put some blame on somebody, and I know you're not going to like this, Dak Prescott. I've been saying that the Cowboys will go as far as Dak Prescott. I don't know how this offense with the Cowboys, with Ezekiel Elliott, Amari Cooper, and Dak Prescott, scores 0 points. I get the offensive line is hurt, and I get that Cole Beasley hasn't played well this year. But 0 points against the Colts, that can't happen. And it's got to improve. And Dak just, I don't know. And it's going to be interesting to see when they have these playoff matchups against, say, the Seahawks, and he's facing Russell Wilson, what happens in a game like that? Because, I thought the Cowboys had a chance, potentially to pass the Bears for that 3rd spot, right? That's not happening now, okay? Because the Bears have too easy of a schedule, and they're going to end up with at least 11 wins. Cowboys can't get 11 wins, so it's impossible. So now Dallas more than likely is going to play the Seahawks to end the season, right? And so, man, if I'm looking at that matchup, you got Russell Wilson on one side and Dak Prescott on the other. Look what just happened when he played Andrew Luck, who's a similar quarterback in status to Russell Wilson. He lost. He lost by 23. So, this whole team needs to figure it out. They got 2 games to figure it out. They're not tied in the division. They don't absolutely need to win. They're not playing the Steelers. They're not playing anybody like that. So the Cowboys need to figure it out because they're going to have a tough playoff matchup now that they got this 4th seed. And they're going to need to win at home against a better quarterback, in my opinion. So it'll be interesting to watch. All right, let's talk about the Steelers and the Patriots. This was, biggest game of this week for most people, through most people's eyes. And the Steelers, I'm going to say it, they upset the Patriots, right? Steelers coming into this game, having lost to the Raiders, having lost at least, I think, 3 in a row, right? And they go in and beat the Patriots 17-10. Big Ben, he did it. He did his job. He won a game. This is the reason he's won 2 Super Bowls, right? The guy is legit. I think the Steelers will be okay because I think they can go and beat New Orleans. I think they can beat the Bengals. I think they'll end the season now at the top of the NFC North. They put trust in it. I want to talk about the Patriots, though. Patriots are now 9-5, a clear 3rd place in the AFC behind the Texans, right? Jared, what is wrong with the Patriots? Why have they already lost 5 games this season? And why couldn't they come back against Steelers? And why did they only score 10 points? A lot of questions there. But what is wrong with the Patriots? It
is. That's a tough question because, listen, Tom Brady is still Tom Brady, right? He still threw for 279 yards. He only had 1 touchdown pass. He did have an interception, which was a great play by Joe Hayden. Made a leaping catch towards the sidelines and kept his feet in bounds. I'm really going to point to the fact that Rob Gronkowski has not been the same guy, right? I mean, I know he's been injured throughout his entire career, but when Tom Brady needs to make a play, you look for the 6'6", 280-pound tight end who's just a big body guy, right? He had 2 receptions for 21 yards. That's pathetic, right? Cordell Patterson, their like third depth wide receiver, had 3 catches for 20 yards. So they basically had an even game right there.
Oh, there you go.
You had Julian Edelman, who had 7 receptions for 90 yards. Chris Hogan had 2 for 68 and a touchdown. But it's like, I think for as great as Tom Brady is, and he makes other receivers a lot better than maybe they really are, I think they are lacking some receiving threats right now. From a running perspective, they don't really have a number one guy. They have a running back by committee. That's how they've done it for years and years. So I'm not going to sit here and harp on that because that's just what they do. They're not used to having one bell cow and then some other complimentary guys. They just have...
Never have.
Right. They have Sony Michel, Rex Burkhead, James White. All 3 of those guys are kind of similar. They all do some of the same things. So that's just what they do. I think right now, and some people can argue, well, they have Josh Gordon, Julian Edelman's a really good slot guy. Yeah, those are true, but these guys aren't showing up and making big plays when Tom Brady needs them to. Now, maybe it's Tom Brady's fault. Maybe he's not seeing it. Maybe he's not throwing it to him when they're open. I'm not sure, but I think they don't necessarily have a go-to receiver, whether it's a Gronk or a guy on the outside that Tom Brady can trust right now and say, when I need someone to make a play, this guy's going to do it for me.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And I've been hearing a lot of people say stuff like this, where this team is just getting older. They're not getting younger, on the offensive end at least, and it's starting to show up. So I think that goes to your point right there. This team reminds me of the Philadelphia Phillies after they were in those 2 World Series. They harped on the fact that they had a lot of star players, but that were aging, right? And I think that's happened to the Patriots a little bit. They still believe that Father Time will never hit any of these guys, and that's including Tom Brady. Tom Brady's still the guy, right? He's had a little bit of a disappointing season this year. You don't want to lose 5 games, 14 games in, right? And so he's had a little bit of disappointing season. But Gronk, where has he been, right? And Edelman, I get he's coming off a knee injury, but where has he been? Josh Gordon, you definitely can't trust. We know that in anything, to be honest. And he's not showing up either, like you probably could have guessed. Chris Hogan had a standout year last year, not performing like that, probably expected. And the running backs are just doing their thing, but I think they're almost relying on them too much, and these guys aren't bell cows. They're not Ezekiel Elliott. They're not Le'Veon Bell. They're not Saquon Barkley, right? You can't just give these guys the ball 30 times and expect them to win you the game. And that's what happened here against the Steelers. They only scored 10 points because of it. And the Patriots will be fine. They'll probably end the season 11-5. They may even get the 2nd seed and make it a bye. But looking at the playoffs, this Patriots team is kind of reminding me of this Patriots team back in 2015 when they lost to the Broncos. A better team is going to come along, Chargers, Chiefs, and it's going to beat them and find a way to win. Ravens possibly too, yeah, exactly. Even the Steelers. I mean, look, the Steelers could beat them. So, you're looking at the Patriots, and they really, really, they got these guys got to step up. Not Tom Brady, these wide receivers, like you're talking about, especially Gronk, who they, he just stays with them and doesn't want to get traded and stuff like that. You got to step up then, and you can't let Kenyon Drake run around you in the corner and give you a loss that's going to affect you for the rest of the season. And you can't go, 2 for 20 in the game, right? It just can't happen. So Tom Brady's stats look the same, but it's who's catching the ball and who's not doing stuff, which is more important to say. And those guys need to step up. We're telling a lot of people to step up, but it's this playoff time, and we're not going to see the rest. We're not going to be talking about the rest of the season on this podcast. So we need to give these guys, some step up and some advice on what to do here. And all these teams need to do this, or there's going to be other teams like the Chargers and like the Bears, who are the 2 hottest teams in the NFL, are going to slip into that Super Bowl, and people are going to be like, what happened? How did that happen? Well, it's because these teams didn't make adjustments, right? So I agree with you. And now let's look at the Steelers. What do you see from the Steelers here? I didn't think they'd win this game. I thought they were done. I mean, we both thought the Ravens would just win the AFC North. Because they looked like they had a little easier of a schedule, and they looked like they're hitting their stride at the right moment. They found lightning in a bottle with Lamar Jackson, literally. And so, what did you see from the Steelers in this game? Did you get more trust in them come the rest of the season?
I didn't.
You didn't?
No, I didn't. And listen, it's a great win against any time you can beat the Patriots and Bill Belichick and Tom Brady. It is a great win, whether you win by 1 point or 20 points. Doesn't matter. You beat the Patriots. That's something to be very, very proud of. I'm still skeptical with the Steelers' defense and really their secondary. I get it. Their defensive line, their kind of front seven is formidable, but their secondary still gives up too many plays. Now, this Steelers' defense is still built on zone blitzing, and so when it works, it looks fantastic. The problem is if the blitzers don't get to the quarterback quick enough, there are open holes all over the football field, right? So if you're playing against an elite quarterback, like a Tom Brady or like a Drew Brees, majority of the time you blitz enough and they're going to be able to find ways to beat you. Now, the Steelers did enough good things, right, in order to win that game, but on a consistent basis, I don't think that this secondary can hold up against good to great quarterbacks. And when you get into the playoffs and you're playing a great quarterback every single week, I'm really just not sure about this defense. So, obviously, from an offensive standpoint, we know that they have weapons. James Conner will hopefully be able to come back from that ankle injury. Their running back, Ridley, who had like 140 yards or something rushing, where in the heck did that come from? Like, that guy, good for them for finding him in the draft because that was a steal. But obviously, you still have Big Ben. You've got Antonio Brown, Juju Smith-Schuster. So from offensively, I'm not worried about them at all. It's really this defense, and can these guys stay on the same page and not give up these big gaping plays like we've seen them, throughout this year? Because yes, they're sitting at 8-5-1 and they're in first place, but I'm just not totally sold on them like I am with some other teams.
Fair point, but I think if you look at the last couple games that they've lost, it's been the offense's fault. It's been Big Ben throwing interceptions. It's been turnovers and stuff like that. So, yes, the defense always needs to step up, but I think, and this is why I'm going to disagree with you on this, I do trust the Steelers again. I trust Big Ben, and I think he has enough weapons around him as well to continue to win games. And you look at, they're eventually going to get James Conner back. He's not done for the season, right? This isn't a Jay Ajayi where he's torn ACL and stuff like that. They're going to get him back. So I think the Steelers, like I said, I'm calling the upset. I think they go into New Orleans, and I think they're going to win that game. And then I think they're going to go into Cincinnati and win that game. They're going to end up 10-5-1. And so I'm going to disagree with you on that. I think the offense was more of the concern. They stepped up against the Patriots. They did enough. And they showed that it was just little mistakes and bad timing plays that lost them in the game, or a kicker slipping or something like that. And there's not a glaring giant issue with the Steelers team. And I think they'll be fine. I'm not going to say they're going to make Super Bowl or anything. But like we're saying, if you finish hot last, if you win your last 3 games, nobody remembers that you lost 3 games in a row, right? So I'm looking at the Steelers, and I'm getting confident. Now, so we got about 4 or 5 minutes left in this segment left here. I want to look at the big games this week, because we're going to do our little predictions later. We're going to pick the NFL MVP later, and the playoffs just a little bit later in the show. Let's look at big games this week. Jared, I've kind of said who I think is going to win some of these games, so I'll let you get first choice on this. Let's start with Saturday. You got Chargers and Ravens in LA. Who wins that game?
Ooh, I mean, right now, how can you go against the Chargers? Right, they go into Kansas City last week and beat the Red Hot Chiefs. Now we know, like I said, the Ravens have the number 1 defense. Lamar Jackson is playing very, very well. Right, he just beat out Joe Flacco for the starting quarterback job. So this Ravens team is very, very formidable. And the thing that I like about them is that they can take their offense and defense anywhere, whether it's at home, on the road, good weather, bad weather. They have a bruising running style and a great defense. So that is kind of the formula that has been, winning championships lately. But with how well the Chargers are playing, with how well Phillip Rivers is playing, and that defense getting Joey Bosa back, Derwin James is a defensive player of the year candidate, I'm going to have to go with the Chargers at home. I think it's a very, very close game.
Yeah.
Like 27-24, 24-21, something like that. It's not a blowout because both of these teams are very even. But for right now, because the Chargers beat the Chiefs last week, I'm going to stick with them to get another victory.
Yeah, you know what? I think I actually said this earlier in the podcast, and I misspoke. I'm actually going to go with the Chargers to win this game. I said Ravens earlier. I didn't mean that. I meant the Chargers. I think Chargers are going to be able to take, like you're saying, that momentum from last week and be able to beat the Ravens. Eventually, Lamar Jackson's going to get stopped. And like I said, you look at these teams trying to make the playoffs, and you got the Ravens and Colts at 8-6. Am I really going to trust Lamar Jackson over Andrew Luck? No. And I've been saying that the last couple weeks. I'm going to stick with that. I think the Colts will eventually get into the playoffs. I thought the Ravens might sneak in via the AFC North because they have the number one defense. But that's looking like that might not happen since the Steelers really stepped up. And I'm going to be behind the Steelers. So Ravens still might make the playoffs, but I don't think they're winning this game against the Chargers. I think Chargers win this one. All right, Eagles and Texans. This is in Philly. Texans with number 2 seed right now. Clear number 2 seed. Let's say the Chiefs lose to the Seahawks and the Texans win. They're tied for the 1st seed, Jared. So who do you think wins this game? Obviously, Eagles starting Nick Foles over Carson Wentz.
Yeah, I like the Texans in this game. Obviously, the Eagles coming off that big win, and you're right, Nick Foles, it seems like he's the better option for this RPO type of offense. But the Texans right now, like you mentioned, that winning streak, I mean, how can you really go against this team, right? Deshaun Watson's playing very well. Obviously, you have DeAndre Hopkins. Lamar Miller's playing well. And guess what? This defense is starting to come along and play very well. When you have J.J. Watt and Jadeveon Clowney, I would never want to go up against those guys, right? So even though it's an away game for the Texans, I'm picking them to win. I think, not to say they're going to blow out the Eagles, but I think this is going to be a little bit easier of a win for them than most people think. I think the way that this team can play, they don't have to throw it around for 300 yards. They can sit here and run the ball, and you know, if it's cold in Philadelphia, which it probably will be, they can run it 20, 30 times with Lamar Miller and Alfred Blue, and I think they'll be just fine. So I'm a little bit higher on this Texans team than maybe you are, Nick, but I'm going with Houston to win this game.
You definitely are, and I was wrong about the winning streak. They did lose the game, and I forgot about this. I don't know how I forgot about this. This happened 2 weeks ago. They lost to Indianapolis Colts and Andrew Luck, and I think they're going to go into this game and they're going to lose the Eagles. If the Eagles were playing on the road, it'd be different because it's a dome, it's all this stuff, and Texans are good at home. But when the Texans lost to the Colts, I just remembered this. I was talking about stuff earlier, and I totally forgot they lost to the Colts. I think that showed because if you look at the rest of the opponents they played before the Colts, they're a little easier opponents, right? And so once they played a tough team and a tough quarterback, they lost. I think they'll lose this game too. The Texans are a good team, but their average is a little overrating them at this point. I think the Eagles have to win, and they'll win this game. And I just think Nick Foles does better in that offense. I think the Eagles are back to being a playoff team that might not make the playoffs, if that makes any sense, because they lost games earlier in the season. Similar to the Chargers last year. All right, Jared, let's go Saints and Steelers. I've kind of said I think the Steelers are going to win, so I'll just let you do the prediction on this one. Who do you think wins this game? It's in New Orleans.
It is in New Orleans. It's a big game for both teams. The Saints. I think they're sitting there right now saying, yes, we are technically number one in the NFC, but we don't have it locked up. The Rams are right behind us, and I think, obviously every team does, but the Saints are like, if we win out, we have an opportunity to stay in New Orleans for the entire playoffs up until the Super Bowl, right? And then they get to go down the road to Atlanta, which is right there. Yeah. So I think they're not taking these last two games lightly at all, and I think this offense is going to get back on track. Like I just talked about, how the Steelers secondary can kind of give up some big plays because, when you zone blitz, you leave open holes in the middle of the field. I think Drew Brees in this offense is going to find those holes, and I think they're going to be able to exploit that Steelers defense this week.
And I've already said I think the Steelers are going to win. I think the Saints with false hope last game with a false win against the Panthers last week. I think that their comeuppance will come and they'll end up losing the Steelers this week. All right, last game we'll talk about on this podcast: Seahawks and Chiefs. This is in Seattle. Both teams coming off, you can say, bad losses. The Seahawks to the 49ers, which is a lot worse. Couple plays at the end, couple calls at the end kind of screwed them in that way. And then, of course, the Chiefs, similar thing, giving up to the Chargers. who wins this Sunday night football matchup?
This is probably one of the toughest matchups of the week for me. Earlier in the year, I would have said Chiefs hands down, no problem. I probably would have put money on it. And from an offensive standpoint, yes, but I can't trust this defense. And Russell Wilson seems to be getting hot at the right time. This Seattle team is not a team that I want to play right now. If I were, an opponent, they're playing very well. Their defense is stepping up and playing very, very well. Bobby Wagner, one of the best middle linebackers in the league, has this team kind of humming right now defensively. Now, they're not the Legion of Boom that they were before, but at least at home, Sunday nights, it's going to be cold. Now, the Chiefs know how to play in cold weather, but it's just playing in Seattle at night is a different type of atmosphere. So I'm actually going to pick Seattle, and I think that's an upset because I believe Kansas City is favored by 2.5. But I think Seattle finds a way. I think Russell Wilson leads a last-minute drive and gets this team another W.
Russell Wilson, I agree with you, will find a way to get through this Swiss cheese offense. So whether they have Doug Baldwin or not, or anybody, I just think the Chiefs are. Ever since they lost Kareem Hunt, they haven't been the same team, and they've even been giving up more points to bad teams. So, I just think the Seahawks need a win. They know how to win, and I think the Seahawks also will go in. I'm high on Russell Wilson, as you know, and so I think they'll go in, and I think the Seahawks will win that game. So we split 2, and then also pick the same team on that one. So it'll be interesting to watch what happens. All right, we're way over time. We need to go to break. We're coming back with a little Do You Care? We'll try to do some non-football news in this one. A couple interesting stories to talk about. So we'll do You Care on the other side of this quick break.
Kayvon, the moment of truth is here. We're all anxious to hear. Which school are you going to?
I'll be taking my talents to the University of Oregon.
So the deal that was so dead last night, it's now back on, and in fact, it's done. The Wizards have agreed to trade Austin Rivers and Kelly Oubre to the Suns directly for Trevor Ariza, according to Adrian Wojnarowski, and he is here. Woj is reporting that a trade between the two, plus Memphis, was called off last night when the Grizzlies balked on which Brooks they were trading. Phoenix wanted Dylan Brooks. Memphis wanted to send them Marshawn Brooks. A big.
We are back here on the Cover 2 podcast, a longer version of the podcast today. If you are listening live right now, or obviously you're listening on YouTube or SoundCloud, we are going to go a little longer. We are going to have a 5th segment today. So if you're listening live, we'll be going a little bit over the 11 o'clock hour that we normally stop at. And so after this, we're going to be talking about college football, the Final Four. We're going to be predicting the Final Four because we're not doing a podcast before the Final Four happens. So, or the college football semifinal. I keep saying that wrong. But so we're going to talk about that, and then also we're going to predict the NFL playoffs, because again, not going to be able to talk about that on the next podcast. And we will also pick the NFL MVPs and discuss the Pro Bowl rosters a little bit. 2 shorter segments at the end, but right now it's time for Do You Care, the segment we always do on the podcast. This is like normal. And Jared, like I just mentioned, what time is it right now?
It's time for
Do You Care? Christmas time version. A little shorter version today because we have a lot to talk about, like I mentioned, and we are going to be doing a little more of the college football pick'em at the end. We're just going to be doing, on the live podcast, we're going to be doing the bigger bowl games, the ones around January 1st and stuff like that. We will put the standings on Twitter and Instagram with the whole picks. We're going to pick off air the other more random bowl games that happen before the next podcast, but they're all going to be done by the next podcast, so we got to pick them all. But Jared, you're going to get first question like always. Do you care that Trevor Ariza was traded to the Washington Wizards for Kelly Oubre and Austin Rivers, who's now been released?
No, I don't care. The only reason why this trade was even really relevant was because of the fact that there was a 3-team trade that was supposed to happen that actually fell apart. And the 3rd team in this trade was going to be the Memphis Grizzlies. Now, I don't know the exact details of this, but the Washington Wizards, Phoenix Suns, and Memphis Grizzlies, all 3 of those teams had agreed to trade certain pieces for something, right? Well, there was a mix-up where I believe it was Memphis thought that they were getting Marshawn Brooks, and really the Suns had said they were willing to give up Dylan Brooks. So
I think it's the other way. I think the Memphis is giving up Dylan Brooks, and the Suns.
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
well, either way, like I get it. You know, the Brooks, the last name, but like neither of those, Marshawn and Dylan, do not sound at all the same. So I don't understand how there was a mix-up there. Either way, there was. That 3-team trade fell apart. The Suns then re-engaged with the Los Angeles Lakers. The problem was the Lakers were not willing to give up any of their young any of their young prospects like Lonzo Ball, Kyle Kuzma, Josh Hart, any of those guys, because there's a potential that they will want to save those guys for an Anthony Davis trade if and when that ever happens. So since that did not happen, the Suns then went back to the Wizards and they just did a 2-team deal, and that's where Trevor Ariza now resigned. So the trade is not really that big of a deal to me. It's really just the fact that, things fell apart, and for a basketball organization to, I guess, have that silly of a mistake and mess up. Nick, do you care that today is the beginning of National Signing Day in college football?
Yes, I do care. My brother, as you guys might know, is a big-time high school football player here in Southern California. So we follow this stuff. A lot of these names of these players play against my brother or play against teams here in Southern California, so I know of them. Early signing day is interesting. Jared, you were telling me that it was a rule that they changed recently that allows players now to sign earlier than usual. I think the signing period was around February in the past. It is now the early signing period, and so this allows students also to be able to possibly graduate high school earlier. And get to those college programs during the spring and the summer, rather than show up just in the summer and fall and not know as much. So that's why you see a lot of these freshmen starting to play more major college football games, because they get that extra time and they almost have a full off season like an NFL rookie and stuff like that. The big time ones. If you're, lower class recruit, you're not necessarily leaving school early if you're not the best student in the world. But this, I think, allows a lot of these kids to get to those colleges earlier and improve college football in there. And just to mention in this, along with this, the earlier this week, Kayvon Thibodeau, the number 1 recruit in high school football, picked Oregon. And Oregon has one of the best recruiting classes in recent memory and overall this year. So Oregon going to probably make a resurgence. Look for them to be pretty good in the next couple of years, getting a lot of really, really good defenders. I know a lot of the kids here in SoCal that they're getting, and these guys are legit. Kayvon Thibodeau, the best of them all, and definitely earned that number 1 recruit moniker, playing at Oaks Christian.
By the way, have you seen him? The dude looks like he's like 20.
I've seen him live.
I've
seen him live before. It's ridiculous.
Freak.
Yeah, no, he. I remember there was a game I was watching on ESPN this year where they were playing some random team in Bakersfield, and dude, it looked like an NFL player playing against high school kids. It was not. He literally would just bat guys out of the way like a cat bats a tennis ball around. Like it was ridiculous. So, kids legit, but early signing days there, and Oregon I think is going to get a pretty good signing period this time around. Jared, do you care? You mentioned this a little bit earlier. Do you care that there are Anthony rumors connected to the Lakers?
I do care and I don't care. And Anthony rumors, plural, is very true. There are 2 rumors going around with the Lakers. One that potentially sounds a little more serious and one that is not, at least in my opinion. The first, which is the least important, is that Carmelo Anthony is still, I guess, somewhat rumored to either want to be joining the Lakers, or maybe the Lakers have a little bit of interest in him. LeBron James came out and said that he would like to play with Carmelo Anthony. We know that off the court they are, very good friends, and they've gone on vacations together and all that type of stuff. But from a basketball standpoint, I just don't see how Carmelo Anthony can really help this Lakers team. He's still of the mindset that he should be a starter and that he's a star player, when in reality he's not. So unless he were literally willing to come on as a role player and more of a mentor, I really don't know what he would provide to this Lakers team. Now, going on to Anthony Davis, the perennial all-star and not even, top 5 best player in the league, no question. There are a lot of rumors that the Lakers and the Celtics are both talking about trading for Anthony Davis. Now, in my personal opinion, I think the Celtics would actually have a better offer to put together as far as players that they would be able to trade away and draft picks. The Lakers have a young nucleus of players, but they don't really have draft picks. So it really depends on, if the Pelicans were to trade, what they would want to get back in return. But for the Lakers, if you have the opportunity to pair LeBron James with Anthony Davis and easily have two of the top 5 players in the league, listen, I love Kyle Kuzma. I like Josh Hart. I still like Brandon Ingram. You trade everyone.
But they're not Anthony Davis, yeah.
You trade everyone except for LeBron James to get Anthony Davis, and you build your team for the next 3 to 4 years with those two guys. I think that is a formidable team that will be able to contend with the Warriors and some other high names. So we'll see if it actually happens. The one key note, Anthony Davis is still under contract with the Pelicans for this year and all of next year. So he wouldn't be technically a free agent until the end of the 2020 season. One thing to keep in mind. Nick, last question for you on this short Do You Care segment. Do you care that the Angels signed a pair of players, including Matt Harvey?
Yes, I do care about this. The Angels rather quiet in free agency with a lot of teams, connected to Bryce Harper and stuff like that, or Manny Machado. But, the Angels slowly, adding some interesting pieces. The first one, Justin Bour, a first baseman. We'll see where he fits in. I think the signing of Justin Bour, I know it's a 1-year deal. The guy ain't that old. First of all, this might be the sign that we're going to see a platoon at first base between Albert Pujols and Justin Bour, and it's going to be the most expensive platoon of all time with Albert Pujols' contract, which I believe is starting to get less and less as he gets older. It's one of those rare deals where he actually is getting paid less, I believe, at the end. I could be wrong about that, but I'm pretty sure that's the way it is. But yeah, so I think this is the end of Albert Pujols' full-time starter stint. But Justin Bour is a starting first baseman. You're not going to put him on the bench. And then, of course, Shohei Ohtani, if he can play, will play DH, recovering from Tommy John surgery. He's not able to pitch or play the field. But and then, of course, Matt Harvey, like you mentioned. Now, the Matt Harvey signing is interesting because, wow, Jared, if we would have said this 4 years ago, the Angels signed Matt Harvey, we'd be like, oh my goodness, they're going to be in the World Series. That is not the case anymore because of Matt Harvey's off-the-field troubles, his arm issues, and many other things. So it's a 1-year deal worth $11 million, $3 million in incentives, so a total of $14 million if he has a good year. This is a smart signing by the Angels only because you're not relying long-term on this dude, and it's a short fix in a year where you're, again, trying to make the playoffs with a new coach and stuff like that. And if Matt Harvey does return to form, you have a star pitcher in the ranks, because I believe there is some of that still left in Matt Harvey in my heart. But the guy needs to not go to the clubs. The guy needs to not go to the on one of his days pitching. He doesn't need to show up in the clubhouse in his pajamas. And he needs to fix his off-the-field life, because we've heard these stories. If you're a baseball fan, you've heard the stories of Matt Harvey having troubles when he breaks up with his model girlfriends, going out to the clubs in New York. So now he'll be in Orange County, and Jared Bean, know where he might be, right? We know where he might be, but he needs to stay away from those spots, and really just focus on pitching like he did with the Cincinnati Reds. Had a solid year with the Reds last year. Now with the Angels, a better team, Mike Trout, good coaching staff, stuff like that. I think he'll be fine. But we'll see what he does. I'm glad the Angels are signing these guys to short-term deals, though, after a couple of their long-term deals didn't help them out, a.k.a. Josh Hamilton, Albert Pujols. So stick with the short-term deals, Angels. All right, Jared, that's the end of the Do You Care segment. We're going to stick on air right now because we're going to do a little more pick'em, right? And, Jared, just to give you a show of what the standings look like right now. If I could find the piece of paper in my hand. There it is right there. Jared, after your picks last week, you are 5-1, and I am 3-3. So you got a 2-game lead going into about 700 games at bowls. So Jared with the early lead. A couple of the games we switched off on, you got right, and I was wrong. And they were blowouts, by the way. We were way off. But so we're just gonna do the better bowls, like I mentioned, the ones with kind of ranked teams in them, the ones with teams we care about, and then one little surprise bowl that Jared will love the name of, and we'll do that. But Jared, so we'll start with this. Michigan State, and we gotta do these quick because we don't have a lot of time. But Michigan State versus Oregon in the Red Box Bowl. Yes, that's the video.
Red Box.
Yeah, Red Box Bowl.
Okay, awesome. I'm gonna go with Oregon. I really don't like the way that Michigan State ended their year. They had some bad losses, and they're a good team. They're a competitive team, but they ended the year kind of on a skid, in my opinion. And Oregon, with that still kind of high-powered offense, I think they're going to be able to score a lot of points and beat Michigan State.
I agree. I think Oregon's a better team. They have an NFL quarterback in the ranks on their roster, so I will go with Oregon as well. All right, number 23, Missouri versus Oklahoma State, who is 6-6 in the AutoZone Liberty Bowl.
I'm going to pick Oklahoma State. And I think that's really just because Oklahoma State put up a really good fight against Oklahoma late in the year this year. And now, Oklahoma State, we know they can score points. It's kind of the same thing to where they can't really defend and they give up a lot of points on defense. But I like Oklahoma State's offense enough that it'll be somewhat of a shootout, but I think they can score just enough to win.
Yeah, Missouri can't score that much, and Oklahoma State can score, so I think they win the game. I think it's close. I think it's lower scoring than you think, but I think Oklahoma State wins that game as well, even though they are 6-6. All right, Tax Slayer Gator Bowl, NC State at 9-3 versus number 19 Texas A&M.
Ooh, I'm gonna go Texas A&M. I really like Jimbo Fisher, and especially what he's doing with his recruiting this year. I think right now they're top 2 in their recruiting, even though it doesn't necessarily have to do a whole lot with the game. I like what he's done with his team so far in his first year, kind of not kind of rebooting this team, but revitalizing it in a very quick year. They put up a really good fight against Clemson earlier in the year, so I like the direction that Texas A&M is heading, and I will go with the Aggies.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Texas A&M as well. Like you mentioned, good early or late early, late game, heroics in some games, big wins, and a tough loss to LSU in like a 70 overtime game. So they would actually be probably ranked a little higher in this game. I think they're the better team, Texas A&M. All right, number 18, Mississippi State versus Iowa, who is unranked. Outback Bowl, both teams with the same record.
Mississippi State. I like them. Mississippi State is a very, very underrated team. They play in the SEC, obviously, so they don't get the same type of looks that Alabama and Georgia and all these other teams do. But guess what? Because they play those teams all year long, they go up against great teams every single week. And Iowa is a good team in their own right, but I think Iowa is much better at home. So when they play away or at a neutral site, they don't tend to play as well. So I'm going with Mississippi State.
I'm going to disagree. I'm going to go with Iowa in this game. I think they'll slow down the clock. They'll be able to stop Mississippi State's offense, and they'll do enough to win in the Outback Bowl. All right, starting with the ranked teams now. Number 16, West Virginia versus number 20, Syracuse in the Camping World Bowl.
I think West Virginia, and I really don't think this one is much of a fight. Now, Syracuse has a good defense that they can hang their hat on, but West Virginia and Will Grier, I think they're too much firepower, and I think they get the job done.
I'm actually I'm going to say this. I'm going to go with Syracuse just to be the devil's advocate because I think if they can get their quarterback back for this game, I think he's a very solid player. I know Will Grier, NFL guy, possible Heisman candidate earlier in the year, is great. But I think Syracuse will do enough in this game. I think they are actually underrated. When you hear Syracuse, you think basketball, you don't think football. I think they'll win this game, and I'll play devil's advocate on this one. All right, Jared, number 24, Iowa State versus number 13, Washington State, Alamo Bowl.
Washington State, man. They, surprised a lot of people this year going up to number 13. Who would have thought that Washington State, not only in the Pac-12...
Good old Mike Leach.
Right, good old Mike Leach would be sitting there at number 13 of the year. Now, obviously, They lost to Washington at the end of the year and lost out on their opportunity to go to the Pac-12 championship. But I think sitting at 10-2, I mean, how can you not go? How can you pick against this team right now? Now, Iowa State is formidable in their own right, finally getting ranked at the end of the year, now sitting at number 24. But I think Washington State, too much offense in this one.
Yeah, no, Washington State's a better team. Washington State should be in the Rose Bowl right now. They're not, and so you got a Rose Bowl team playing Iowa State in this game. Alamo Bowl tends to do that because some of the Pac-12 cast-offs end up in this game. I think Washington State all the way. Number 22, Northwestern at 8-5 versus number 17, Utah, Holiday Bowl.
This is a very even matchup in my opinion. I think a lot of people who maybe don't know football will probably pick Utah, but I'm actually going to go with Northwestern. Not that I don't like Utah, but Northwestern is kind of a sneaky team. They had kind of a 3-game losing streak, then they had like a 4-game winning streak. They put up a decent fight against Ohio State this year. I like Northwestern. I think they're a lot tougher than most people think, even though they don't really get the type of recruits that other big time programs do.
Absolutely. I'm going to go actually with Utah in this game. I think although they lost their quarterback, running back's been injured too. I think they're a better team than Northwestern. And I think the Big 10 was a little overrated this year. Although the Pac-12 was not very good. I think the Big 10 a little overrated, and some of Northwestern's wins can be tracked back and not as good as they were. Plus, Utah way closer to San Diego than Northwestern is, so I'll go Utah in that game. All right, number 14, Kentucky versus number 12, Penn State, Citrus Bowl.
Penn State, and I don't think this one is really close. I think Kentucky. Listen, they had a great year, obviously, coming out of nowhere, and I mean literally nowhere, because I can't remember the last time Kentucky football was good. But I think their fire's kind of burned out a little bit. I don't think there's any way that they win this game.
Yeah, I think Penn State all the way. They got Trace McSorley. He's a great quarterback. Kentucky's been overrated the whole year. I agree. All right, number 10, Florida versus number 7, Michigan. This is the Chick-fil-A Bowl.
This is going to be a very, very good game. I'm going to pick Michigan. I think Michigan, even though they lost to Ohio State and didn't get an opportunity to play in the Big Ten championship game, I think they are coming off of a very, I don't want to say great year because they had an opportunity for that. They're coming off a good year, and I think they're still riding very high. I think Jim Harbaugh has this team trending in the right direction, and I think it's going to be a good matchup. The last time these two teams played, it was a very close game, and I think it'll be similar, but I think Michigan just edges out Florida this year.
I'm going to go with Michigan as well. I think they need something to prove. Florida's a great team. Don't get me wrong, but I think Michigan with Jim Harbaugh, all that stuff, the bad loss to Ohio State again, I think they'll be looking for something to prove, and I think they'll win this game, and Harbaugh will get his 11th win of the season, but still a little bit disappointing, of course. All right, I'm going to go. You said Michigan that game, right?
I did.
Okay. I'm going to go, number 11, LSU versus number 8 and the defending national champion, UCF Knights at 12-0. This is the PlayStation Fiesta Bowl.
LSU. LSU's a better team. They have better talent. I get it, UCF. You've been undefeated for 2 straight years. LSU, even though they've had some bumps this year, right? They had that 7 overtime game against Texas A&M. The teams that they have played this year, they should easily beat Central Florida. Now, Central Florida, I'm sure, will come out and put up a good fight, but in reality, I expect LSU to come out and dominate this game.
LSU will win. I would say UCF 100% if they hadn't lost their quarterback. And once they lost their quarterback, that was it. An SEC team is going to beat a non-Power 5 team without their star quarterback, right? So I'm going to go with LSU. I think the winning streak ends. And interesting note, though, about UCF. Florida came out, who like we just mentioned, is ranked number 10, came out and said they want to play a series with them. And that it would be Florida, it'd be a 3-game series. Florida would get 2 home games, UCF 1. That means Florida would travel to Orlando. That's not hard travel at all. UCF, Gotta do it. Gotta do it, right? If Florida's willing to do it, might as well.
They're hesitating. They haven't said yes yet.
Which is interesting, right? Because, maybe they know they're losing a lot of guys. They don't want to ruin the whole thing, want to stay undefeated. I don't know. But I think they need to take that for sure. All right, number 15, Texas versus number 5, Georgia, All-State Sugar Bowl. Jerry, I know who you're going to pick in this game.
I'm taking Georgia.
Yeah, so
but listen, Texas, I mean, the way that they played the end of the year, Texas is a very good team. Their defense is legit. Offensively, I'm not really sure they can score enough points to stay in this game. But, no, defensively, they are very, very good. But Georgia is Georgia, and Georgia should win this game, right? The way that they should have beat Alabama, right? They should be
True.
They should be probably the number 1 seed right now. But no, I'm picking Georgia in this one.
I'm going with Georgia as well. They need to prove that they deserved to be in like TCU did a couple years ago. They need to blow Texas the hell out. Tom Herman's the coach over at Texas. They've had a good year this year, but it's just not going to happen. Georgia's going to win this game. They almost beat Alabama. There's no way they lose to Texas in a bowl game that's right down the street, too, in New Orleans. All right, last one we're going to predict, Jared, until the Final Four in the next segment. Number 9, Washington versus number 6, Ohio State, the Rose Bowl.
Yeah, I think Ohio State wins this one as well. I don't think this one is as close as many people think. Washington's a good team. Ohio State should win, and they should be a little upset that they weren't able to get into the College Football Playoff, but they should be upset at themselves because they had opportunity, right? You lose to Purdue, and that basically puts you in too big of a hole to climb out of. But Ohio State is the better team, and they should win this game relatively easily, in my opinion.
I think so, too. And it's Urban Meyer's last game at Ohio State as well. I know, I think Mike Weber said he's declaring for the draft, but he's playing in the bowl game, their star running back, so they still have him. Yeah, Ohio State's going to win this game, especially in Urban Meyer's last game. There's no way it ends. It ends poorly. And I don't know how close the game is, but I think Ohio State will find a way to win for sure. All right. That's the Pick'em segment. We'll come back with more college football talk. 2 shorter segments to end the podcast, college football, and then we'll finish it off with NFL predictions. That's coming up next in the Cover 2 podcast here on OC Rock Radio.
That we bought into a week ago, last couple of weeks, we've been on Bama, Clemson, Notre Dame, and Oklahoma. And so that's the Final Four we got. We said Georgia had to beat Alabama. It's not fair that if you lose to Alabama, Alabama should not have to play a couple of weeks later. That's not fair. And we didn't buy into Ohio State and the committee agreed with us here. You can't lose to Purdue by 29 points.
Welcome back to the Cover 2 podcast. Once again, I'm Jared Smith.
I'm Nick Nino.
And we are going to continue our college football talk, and specifically now looking at the college football semifinal matchups with Alabama facing Oklahoma and Clemson facing Notre Dame. So, Nick, I want to jump right into it. Let's start with that Alabama-Oklahoma matchup, 1 versus 4. Obviously, we know how great Alabama is. Tua is kind of coming off of a knee injury a little bit, right? But we all saw what Jalen Hurts did, leading them to a comeback win against Georgia. And then obviously we know that Kyle Murray, the now Heisman winner, leads his Oklahoma Sooners into Hard Rock Stadium to face Alabama. So give me your thoughts on this game, and then we will predict.
I'm excited about this game. I'm glad this is the 5 o'clock game on that day here Pacific time because, this is the main event, right? This is the juggernaut Alabama, the best team in college football. Heisman candidate in Tua. Great story with Tua and Jalen Hurts and the reversal of roles in the SEC championship game. And then, of course, you have them playing Oklahoma, who has one of the best offenses in football and the best player in college football, Kyler Murray, who is not going to play in the NFL and will never play football again after either this game or the national championship game because he's going to play in the MLB. So very, very good story there. Quick note, Alabama favored in this game by 14. That's a little surprising to me because I think this game will be a shootout, but shootouts tend to not be blowouts. And so if you're a betting man, I would suggest betting the plus 14 on Oklahoma in this game. So I don't know if they're going to win, but I think that's a little more of it's a little too much, and maybe that will lower as people start betting Oklahoma in this game. This is interesting for me. I know Tua's getting healthier and healthier, But Jalen Hurts, I don't believe, will be able to do the same thing against this Oklahoma team. I think this Oklahoma team can score too much. And if Tua doesn't play, that changes everything for this game. I think he will, but if Jalen Hurts does end up having to play a significant amount of this game, I'm going to give it to Oklahoma. I think Kyler Murray cares too much. I think he's a great player. I think this Oklahoma offense is fantastic. They have a lot of guys that can score. They got 2 great receivers. They got a good tight end. They got 2 great running backs. And, of course, they have the best player in college football. Defense, we all know about that. It's a Big 12 defense. It's like the Kansas City Chiefs. It's very interesting. But you can score 50 points, you're going to have a chance. And I think this Oklahoma team can score 50 points. But I'm going to predict Alabama wins this game. I think Tua will play. Alabama's too good. They're not losing in the semifinal. If anything, they lose in the final because it's one game. But they'll find a way to win this game. It's more of a home game for them because it's in Florida, and they tend to play in the state of Florida a lot during the season. They've won a national championship in this place before. So they'll come out. They got Nick Saban. They got a great defense. They got guys. They've been the best team in college football. They're not losing a first-round game unless something drastic happens.
Yeah, right. The one thing I will say is if Jalen Hurts does have to go into this game and it starts to become a little bit more of a shootout to where Oklahoma is having success against this Alabama defense, then I think you're right. Then I think Alabama's in trouble. That's about the only way that I see Alabama having trouble. Because if Tua plays, he's going to light up this Oklahoma team is almost like a splitting. Well, I don't want to say splitting image because I'm not trying to say that Kyler Murray is Patrick Mahomes, but they're very similar in the Kansas City Chiefs. They have great offenses, right? Fantastic. They can score points with anybody, and their defenses are Swiss cheese, and they can't stop anybody. So for me, if Tua plays, he will light up that Oklahoma defense, and Alabama can score 50 points, and I would not be surprised. The Oklahoma offense will have a little bit more trouble, obviously, because Alabama's defense is legit. They can score points, but I think it will be too difficult in the end for them. And really, this is Alabama's game to lose unless Jalen Hurts has to come in and, like you said, play a significant amount of snaps.
I agree. They have a way better roster because they have that great defense. Alabama, the better team. But if you look at it, you look at the Alabama, and it's like the Chargers, right? Where we compare it to this Chargers-Chiefs game that happened last Thursday. The team with the more complete roster can find a way to win when there's a glaring error and there's certain stuff that happens in the game. So I think if there's some, screwy stuff that happens in this game, I think Oklahoma can win. But if it's just a football game and nothing happens, I think Alabama all the way. Like I said, they didn't get all the way. They didn't dominate this season. They didn't go undefeated to lose in the first round of the playoff, right? Anybody can lose in the Super Bowl or a championship. We've seen that with New England over the Giants and stuff like that. But this first game, you don't tend to lose that one. So I'm going to go with Alabama in this. But Alabama in a close game. I don't think it's a blowout. All right, let's move to Clemson versus Notre Dame. This is, of course, number 2 versus number 3. It's in the Cotton Bowl. It's in your Cowboys stadium, the AT&T Stadium. Clemson favored by 13.5. Jared, what are your first thoughts on this matchup?
Yeah, no, I'm a little surprised by Clemson being favored by double digits.
Same with me.
I'm going to pick Clemson to win this game. Coming out, I'll say that from the beginning. But no, obviously Notre Dame, they're 12-0 for a reason, right? They've played very, very well this year. I don't think many people expected them to play this well coming into the season. I forget what they were ranked before the season started in the preseason rankings. But, with them having an open schedule basically every year, being an independent, not being associated with a specific conference, they're able to pick their own schedule. Now, I think that hurts them in some ways, but when they go undefeated like this, it is tough to argue. The only real thing you can argue with them is that they don't have a conference championship game. But they did what they had to do. They went undefeated. They fixed their defense. That was a huge weakness for them last year. And Coach Kelly has his offense kind of humming right now. So I think they can put up points. The problem is, on the other side, you got Trevor Lawrence and a great Clemson offense that has so much speed on that team. When they get going, it's tough for Alabama, as good as their defense is, to stop Clemson's offense because of their speed and because of how good they are. So I can see Clemson winning this game definitely, like I said, I'm just surprised that it's a double-digit point spread already.
Yeah, I mean, Notre Dame coming into the season, I didn't think a lot of people thought that they would be a candidate for the college football playoff. They were going to be a good team, but I didn't think they'd be this good. I think Notre Dame has already peaked this season in a way, and I just think Clemson's been blowing people out all season. And Clemson's been a poor man's Alabama, but not that poor of a man, right? They're still a great team. And so I'm going to go with Clemson in this game. I think the favored by 13.5 is a trick by Vegas to get the odds to possibly be lower or something like that and trick some people. But I think Clemson wins this game a little easier than Alabama does. I just think they're a better team. And I just don't see Clemson not being in a national championship this year. So I'm going to go with Clemson. Like you mentioned, a lot of speed on that team. Trevor Lawrence, fantastic freshman quarterback. Freshmen can win nowadays. We see it too much. So I'm not going to give them a knock on that. And then of course they got that great defense too, a fantastic defense. So, so Clemson's great. They've been one of the best teams in all of college football. Similar to Alabama, I don't see Clemson losing in the semifinal. I could see them losing in the national championship, but I'm predicting Alabama and Clemson once again in the national championship, and I'm not going to be disappointed by that either.
I'm looking at right now Clemson's stats as their team stats for the year.
Yes.
They only give up, I should say, 276 yards a game.
That's what I'm talking about.
That's very good.
The defense is fantastic. They got a lot of NFL draft picks coming out. You know what I'm saying?
I'm pretty sure their entire defensive line can be drafted in the first or second round of the NFL.
I love that too. I love when defense. You've seen Alabama do that the last couple of years with just a lot of men right on the defensive line. So defense wins championship, guys. And when you have defense and a really good offense, which you get in college football a lot because there's no salary cap or anything like that, you can really do it. So I'm going Clemson, Alabama. Obviously, you're going Clemson, Alabama too. We will predict the national championship on our next podcast, but we wanted to talk about this on this podcast because we, of course, we're not going to see these games, not going to be able to talk about them before because we're skipping next week. But so should be interesting games. I'm not going to be disappointed by either game. I'm really excited about that Oklahoma-Alabama game, especially just for the star power in that game. But I will definitely be watching both of them. I'm excited about a lot of these other college football games we talked about in the other segment too. Rose Bowl will be interesting. Urban Meyer's last game. We'll see if Georgia can prove something as well. Quick note also, Brian Kelly named AP Coach of the Year for the second time in his career. The other time was when they were in the national championship. I don't think that will happen this year. They won't get in the national championship. They won't get blown out. But nonetheless, interesting little facts there. And I'm excited about college football. All right, Jared, we're going to take a break. We're going to finish off the podcast coming up next with NFL playoff predictions. We're going to pick the 12 teams we think is going to get in. We're also going to be doing MVP picks, and we're also going to be talking a little bit about the Pro Bowl. So that is coming up next here on the Cover 2 podcast on OC Rock Radio.
My guy is Drew Brees. I think Drew Brees has been the MVP candidate all season long. And I like Patrick Mahomes. I like Aaron Donald as well. But Drew Brees has 4 interceptions on the year. Patrick Mahomes has 11. Drew Brees is also the all-time passing leader. He's also second on the touchdown list. And he's about to break his own completion record. So for me, to be able to accomplish these things all in one season is unheard of, and that's tough to do. So you can't ignore those. You can't ignore what he's doing. You can't ignore the body of work. Plus, his team right now is sitting at the top of the division and competing with the Rams for the #1 spot.
We are back here on the Cover 2 podcast. A rare 11 o'clock start to a segment. If you're listening live, we normally stop at 11 o'clock. We have so much to talk about. Got a little extension. We're going to go all the way to around 11:15 today, because we need to talk about this stuff. And got college football and got a lot of the NFL news in, and we need to predict who we believe is going to be in the NFL playoffs, because we will not be able to predict before our next podcast. The playoffs will already be set. So we're also going to talk about the NFL MVP later in this segment too and predict that as well. But Jerry, you want me to go first? Or you want to go NFC, AFC, and just kind of go between thing and just kind of discuss who we think is going to get in and discuss why?
AFC, NFC.
All right, let's do the AFC first. I'll give my predictions first. I think, and there's I did look at the schedules and stuff like that, and you just gotta look who they play. And I think based on predictions today and teams that play teams in Week 17, I think this is what is going to end up happening. We'll start from the bottom each one. I think the Colts sneak in. I think the Ravens, because they lose to the Chargers this week and end up probably beating the Browns Week 17, they are going to end up 9-7, and the Indianapolis Colts, I believe, will win their last 2 games. They'll end up at 10-6, sneaking into that 6th spot. Here's the interesting one, Jared. My 5th seed, Kansas City Chiefs. I think the Chargers end the season winning their last 2 games, and similar to what I talked about with the Colts and Ravens, Chiefs I'm predicting lose to the Seahawks. That would mean they'd have a worse record. The Chiefs end up slipping into that 5th spot. Who would have thought that?
Wow.
Yeah. So going to the division winners, that matchup with the Chiefs will be playing the Pittsburgh Steelers in the first round. I think the Steelers obviously end up going 10-5-1. They win the AFC North clearly and end up with that 4th spot. So that should be a pretty interesting matchup there. I got the Texans as the 3rd seed. I think they lose the game to end the season. And then they end up with the same record as the Patriots, who have the tiebreaker win over the Texans. So I got them as the 2 seed. The Patriots as the 2 seed because they 2 easy matchups to end the season. And then the Chargers, number 1 seed in the NFL at 13-3. Who would have predicted that after all their kicker issues last year? But nonetheless, you look at it's hard to argue based on what I've said on this podcast already. These are going to be the 6 teams in the AFC.
Wow. That is not necessarily surprising to me because I have some of those similar teams in similar spots. But yeah, you're right. Who would have thought the Chiefs, for how well they played, and potentially to slip to a wild card spot?
Yeah, what the hell?
It's a little crazy. So I will start from the bottom as well. The pick that I like the most from you is I'm actually agreeing with you. I think the Colts slide in there. I think the Chargers do beat the Ravens, and I think the Colts, because they have a little bit of an easier schedule to end the year with the Giants and the Titans.
Yeah, exactly.
I think the Colts jump up and get that 6th spot. I actually agree with you, and you took some of my thunder. I listen, the way that it's going right now, like I said, how can you go against the Chargers? I think the Chiefs, obviously, they're already slated to make the playoffs, but I think they will go in as that number 5 seed. Number 4, I think, is the Pittsburgh Steelers as the division winner right there. I think the Houston Texans, I know the Houston Texans are going to win their division. They will be the number 3 seed. The Patriots will be the number 2 seed because of how crappy their schedule is to end the year with the Bills and the Jets. This happens every year with them to where their division is so bad that they, the NFL, which I do like the last probably 10 or 15 years, to end the year, the last 1 or 2 games is always against their division opponent. And luckily for the Patriots, because their division has been so horrible, they basically get cupcake games at the end of the year. So they will vault up from currently the number 4 spot to the number 2. And I'm going to agree with you again, unfortunately, that the Los Angeles Chargers will be the number 1 seed in the AFC. Who in the hell would have thought?
Yeah, it's hard to argue, guys, because we predicted certain games this week. We'd be going against our predictions if we thought certain teams would end up in certain spots. But this game between the Ravens and Chargers is huge. And I even think the Chargers go into Denver, which has been a historically difficult spot for them to play, and win that last game, too. So I'm not saying it's going to be easy for the Chargers, but I just think they have the momentum right now, and they'll get into to slipping. Obviously, we're doing this barring, hopefully that Phillip Rivers doesn't tear his ACL in one of these games, something like that. But based on everyone staying healthy and them just winning these games, that's the way we will do it. And if something does happen, we'll post on Twitter and readjust our standings if something major happens that we need to, because these predictions are obviously they matter, but in the long run, if something crazy happens, it's going to look stupid if we make predictions that from 2 weeks prior. All right, let's go to the NFC. This one's a little more interesting here. Not necessarily at the top, because I think it will end up. I'll let you do that. Your predictions first. I want to see, especially who you have ending up at the bottom of this.
Got it. So, actually, because
why don't you do this? Why don't you actually go from top to bottom with the NFC, because I think it's a little more interesting at the bottom.
Top to bottom.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Actually, there's not. So basically, they're the 6 top teams that are in the lead right now. I think it's going to say the six
Okay,
are getting
very
in,
interesting.
right? I don't think the Eagles, the Redskins, the Panthers, which are the first three out, I don't think any of those three teams will jump into a wild card spot. So I have the New Orleans Saints, the Rams, the Bears, the Cowboys, the Seahawks, and the Vikings, all six of those NFC teams making the playoffs. Now, as far as the order goes, I'm actually going to give well, it's tough. I think I'm going to give the Saints the number 1 seed. I think they beat the Steelers.
Because we just learned some information that Cam Newton is not playing for the rest of the season either. So they're going to win that last game.
They're going to win that, right. I give it the Saints number 1. The Rams, I think, will stick with number 2 because of how easy of a schedule they have to end the year. The Bears will stick at number 3. The Cowboys would have to win their last 2 games. The Bears would have to lose and then would go to division conference records. But I think the Bears stick at number 3. And I think the Cowboys win the NFC East and bring up the rear as the number 4 seeded team.
Well, and the Bears are 10-4 and the Cowboys, yeah, exactly. So that's and they're going to
the Cowboys technically could get the number 3 seed, but the Bears would have to lose.
The Bears are
Cowboys
losing
have to
2
win.
games. Yeah,
right, exactly. So I think it stays with those 4, and I actually think it stays the same as well. We both picked the Seahawks to beat the Chiefs, and then to end the year, the Seahawks play the Cardinals, which should be a win for them as well. So I think the Seahawks are the number 5 seed.
And you're also predicting them to beat the Chiefs as well.
Yes. And then I think the Minnesota Vikings squeak in as the number 6 seed.
Yeah, like you kind of did with the AFC. You stole out of my thunder on this. I'm gonna Saints number 1 seed. They're gonna win that last game against the Panthers. Now that we know that Taylor Hinkie is the quarterback for the Panthers and not Cam Newton, and they need to get that number 1 seed. Like we said, they already have the tiebreaker. So all they essentially need to do is just win one of those games and they get in as the number 1 seed. Rams number 2, too easy of a schedule, like you said. Bears number 3. They might lose one of these games coming up at the end of the season. I don't think they will. I think they'll beat the Vikings week 17, which will reveal who my 6th seed is, because it's not going to be the Vikings. That's the one change we have. Because I think the Bears will win that last game. But Dallas, easy, number 4. And then I'm going to go with the Seahawks, number 5. I think they end up 10-6. I don't see them losing to the Cardinals like they historically have in that last game or at home. They don't do well at home against the Cardinals, but the Cardinals are not a good team this year, I can say, because I watch all the games. So Seahawks will stay in that 5th spot at 10-6, even with the bad loss to the Niners, and then the 6th seed. I think Nick Foles and the Philadelphia Eagles sneak in, Jared. I'm sorry. So the reason I'm saying this is because I think the Vikings will end up the season 8-7-1 with a loss to the Bears in Week 17. And I think the Eagles will go undefeated. Like I said, I think they can beat the Texans, and then they'll beat the Redskins and Josh Johnson. So they end up 9-7. The better record obviously gets in. And so I think that the Eagles sneak into that 6th spot. So you have an Eagles versus Bear matchup, and then Dallas versus the Seahawks, which I said was that's going to be tough for the Cowboys. And then of course in the AFC you have Colts Texans. That's an interesting matchup, and then Steelers Chiefs. So very interesting, Jared. I'm glad we agreed though, because we're not totally off on the predictions. Kind of hard with the predictions we made earlier today to say some of this stuff, but nonetheless, let's do some more predictions. NFL MVP. I think the 4 candidates we can agree on are Aaron Donald from the Rams, Phillip Rivers, Patrick Mahomes, and Drew Brees. So if you can think of a 5th one that you want to say, you can say that. But I think out of those 4, Jared, who do you think wins the NFL MVP?
I have to give it to Drew Brees. Now, I probably up until week 12 or week 13, I would have given it to Patrick Mahomes for just how ridiculously good he is. I mean, throwing no-look passes, that doesn't happen in the NFL, right? His arm strength is through the roof. He can make any throw in the league. He's been great. But Drew Brees is just, I mean, and you know, the thing is, he broke Peyton Manning's touchdown record this year. I feel that he has earned it for his age, how well he's playing. I get it. He has weapons. He has Alvin Kamara. He has Michael Thomas. He has guys that can make plays on the outside. So does, Patrick Mahomes, so does Phillip Rivers. But I think at the end of the day, what Drew Brees has done on a consistent basis at his age, I think he deserves to get it this year.
This is a very interesting MVP debate. Out of the four we mentioned, I think the one you can kind of cross off the list is Aaron Donald. Only because I think if you're a defensive player, you have to absolutely dominate games and win games for your team. And with these last couple losses with the Rams, it's proving that Aaron Donald is not the most valuable player.
I would actually put like Khalil Mack ahead of Aaron Donald in this.
Potentially.
Now, Khalil
He's
Mack
been
missed
injured
some
a lot,
games with injuries.
exactly.
If he were healthy all season, I would actually put Khalil Mack ahead
but
of
Aaron Donald got completely stopped last game against the Eagles, and you can't get completely stopped at any games if you want to be MVP as a defensive player. So he's crossed off. Now, looking at, these three quarterbacks, it's very, very interesting. You look at Brees, obviously he's had the great year, but in the last 3 games, he has not played like an MVP, and it is potentially almost lost a couple of games and has lost a game to the Cowboys by not playing that well and not stepping up. You look at Patrick Mahomes, similar thing, hasn't won the big games this season, so is he really the most valuable player, right? But then you look at it, and without him, where would the Chiefs be? Similar to what they were with Alex Smith last year, right? And then you look at Phillip Rivers. Phillip Rivers has a lot more talent around him, but he has played like an MVP has played and has won the big games. Based on all of it, I think Phillip Rivers is the MVP of the NFL. And this is going to end up being because they're going to end up being the number 1 seed, right? I think voters will be swayed in these last 2 games with big wins against the Chiefs, Ravens, and in Denver to end the season. And then also the Steelers game, too, a big win there. I think that's showing that Phillip Rivers throughout the entire season was fantastic, and that's why I think he'll get it. Also, I believe he's never won an MVP, correct? I think there might be a little pity vote there. But I don't think Brees is going to end the season as well as people think he is, and I think that that's going to hurt him against the older quarterback. Mahomes hasn't won the big games. That's what his knock is, at least for me. I think Phillip Rivers is the MVP of the NFL.
Wow.
Right there,
Number
very
1
interesting.
seed Chargers and Phillip Rivers MVP? Ugh.
Yeah, it's better than the Eagles getting the MVP, right?
Okay.
The Redskins.
All right, I'll get that.
I got you, Jared. But so that'll be interesting. Podcast coming to the end. Real interesting. We got about 2 minutes to go till 11:15. Our final thoughts will both be the Pro Bowl rosters, any snubs, any interesting things to talk about with that to end off.
I'll give 2. One, Alvin Kamara got snubs.
Yeah, how the hell did that
Saints.
happen?
Now, he's in a committee with Melvin Ingram as far as Melvin Ingram. What am I saying?
Melvin, no, Mark Ingram.
Mark Ingram,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I got the Ingram part right, not the name, not the first name.
Melvin, yeah.
But, he's in a committee with him. But the things that he's able to do, how versatile he is, being out of the backfield, catching the ball out of the backfield, being a receiver in the slot. He does so many things for that Saints offense. I think he was a big snub. And then this is somewhat of a homer pick if you want to say it. I think Leighton Vander Esch, the rookie linebacker from the Cowboys, the way that he stepped in for Sean Lee, he has over 100 tackles. He leads the Cowboys in tackles. He's a sideline-to-sideline player. A lot of people are comparing him to Brian Urlacher. I'm not necessarily doing that because those are huge shoes to fill.
Yeah.
But he is this generation's linebacker, and I think what he's done for this team, like I said, is not going unnoticed. Apparently, it is to most people, but I think if you go back and look at his tape all year, he deserves to be in the Pro Bowl.
Yeah, you got to fill Sean Lee's shoes before you fill Brian Urlacher's, right? But I'm going to go bias on the Pro Bowl picks. I'm going to go with I'm excited Patrick Peterson. He's made the Pro Bowl every single year of his career, showing that he's the best corner in the league, and if the Cardinals trade him, we need to get 2 first-round picks, right? But happy for him, and I really hope one of the alternates for the Cardinals, Larry Fitzgerald, gets to play in this Pro Bowl because I think it's going to be his last year, and I think that'd be a great ending to be able to play in one last game even after the regular season. I think that's the kind of players that like to play in those games, and those are the kind of players that deserve to play in those games. Almost like you saw Kobe and Jeter get into all-star games late in their career, even though they didn't deserve it. Fitzgerald doesn't necessarily deserve it this year, but I think with all he's done, put him in the Pro Bowl. Somehow, let's find a way to get him in. All right, there's the music right there. It's the end of the podcast. Jared, crazy podcast today. A lot to talk about. Obviously, we will not be back until 2019, right? So the last podcast is 2018. It's been a good year. A lot of interesting things. Great football year. We'll see if our predictions are right, and we'll post all that stuff as well as all the picks for the college football pickup and see what we get right. That's the end of the podcast. End of 2018. Once again, for Nick Neenan,
I'm Jared Smith.
This has been the Cover 2 podcast.